So this video is part of B06 using Python packages lab 2, where we're going to be talking about file input. So as mentioned in the introductory videos, we need to import this package called OS, which allows us to change our current working directory. This is related to the command inside this package, get current working directory, get cwd, which has no arguments, but will tell us which directory we're working in. That can make it easier then to define whether we want to say os.change directory, chdir, to assign the correct directory stem inside here in brackets. And that can make things a lot easier for us when we're trying to read in different files. And as we know from the introductory videos, we have this structure open, which reads in a file, and we have our file, and the second argument is whether we want to write, append, or read. And we're going to focus on reading here. And we know that when we have this file handle, our data is sent basically to file 1, and that file handle allows us to use the functions like read lines or other ones to read that output. So we can print that output. So we could actually print file1.readlines to print out each of the lines in that file. We have to note as well that we need to close our file too. We have the with open structure, which opens the file temporarily, so we don't need to officially close it using that function. We put it together as a with open, a bit like declaring a function in that manner. And the full structure has with open and the file name and stuff inside here. And then we have as nickname1, and we use that nickname to refer to the file as we're reading it through. So an example is given here where we have with open our file as reader. So then we use reader subsequently. So you can say reader.read to print out the whole file, reader.readline. So this line says reader.readline goes to the first line in that file. We say while the line is not empty, print out that line with nothing at the end, and then go to the next line. So this reader.readline automatically goes to the next line in the file. An example could be where we want to read data into an empty list like that. And we use the same structure we had before for a bunch of sequences. Maybe they're reading in, and you can try this with input 2 in your folder. We're going to read that in. So we call that as the reader. We're going to say for each line in reader.read lines. So that's going to iterate through all the lines in the file. The line is we're going to substitute the greater than symbols, which are the ones on these lines here. So if that contains a line, that will be removed or replaced with nothing. The spaces are going to be removed as well. So you see the spaces there, and that can happen to us sometimes. And then it's also going to remove the new lines at the end of the lines here. So they're removed. So we're going to print out here the line just to check what's there, and we're going to append it onto that list. So we're going to add it into our list there. Another thing we're going to try is importing the CSV file package, which allows us to do a whole bunch of functions with CSV files that may contain, for example, sequence data in this kind of manner. So if we do that, we have the file handle as we had before that we're trying to read in. And what we do is we give that file handle to this function csv.reader with the delimiter as the comma, tab, or whatever we want. And that goes into the CSV reader variable we declare here, and we say for each line in the file, print that row. So it's basically the same thing as before. It's just a different way of constructing it with the CSV reader as being a key component of that. We can make things more advanced. So we're taking the same construct we had before with the CSV file and CSV reader. We're saying for each row in the CSV reader, if the line is if the first line with a header, we're going to print the column names and we're going to join them together. So join together the row, that's the column names, because row is the variable here for indicating that line, and we're joining them together using this special function with a comma. And then we increment the lines. So instead of saying line count is equal to line count plus 1, we have line count plus equals 1. It's the same thing. If the line count is indeed 1 or greater, we'll print out the sample in the row containing the row information, contain the sample name and then the alleles. So it's the first row allele is in row square brackets 1, the second allele is in row square brackets 2, and so on and so on. We can iterate through all those alleles. And then we just keep counting our lines as we go through. And this will give us the output. So it will print out the samples separately from that file, which we had here, and then it'll print out each of the sample names, the row element 0, row element 1 is A, row element 2 is A as well, and so on and so on. It'll go through all of them like that. So that's what we're looking at. So let's pause now and move to PyCharm to look at this more carefully. Okay, so we have our Python here, and we've got OS as being imported so we can change directories. So what we can do is print out the current working directory using this command here and print out where we are. So we're in users, my name, PyCharm projects 2, and dictionary 1. That's the name of where we are at. That's important because I might want to change the directory. In fact, I think I have a directory in a separate folder, so I'm going to put that in there. So I'm going to change it to this folder instead. So I'm changing the directory and I'm going to print it out now at the end. So now we can see we've changed directory because I know I have my files and folders inside here, hopefully. What we're going to do is read in a file from that folder. If I want to read in a file from that folder, there's a few ways of doing this. I can write out full file extension like this. So you can see that there we have the full file extension of where input.txt is, and that should work. So we might want to check that this works and just write in. So we have print file1.read line for the whole thing. So let's see if this works. So you can see there that is printed out 1. So that must be what's in that file. If we change this and remove the file stem, does it still work? Yes, indeed it does. So it's printed out whatever is in that file. If we try this for input 2, you can see there it's printed out more there. If we do it for read lines, we can see that we get more printed out. So it prints out all the different elements inside there. So we can try that for input, try input read lines. You can see 1, a new line, and 2. That's what's inside there. So what we can try is the with statement. So you can say open this file as let's call it reader 1. So we're going to put in, we could put in there print reader 1 read lines to print it all out like that. So you see there is printed out each item. Instead, what you might do is put in a for loop there. So you might say for row 1 in reader 1. Have a colon there. Say print row 1 like that. See what's inside the file. And now we get an ordered list with all that stuff there. So you might do is write re.sub, which we had in the previous one, where we're going to replace the new line with nothing. So let's try that to see if we can remove the new line. So it says there it was never closed at the end. So we need to end that. So re is not defined. So again, we need to import re. Try it again there, and we see there the new lines have been removed. And we could do that further. So we could have resub there. And what we could do is reassign that to row 1. And just copy the code for the next line. We're just going to remove the space like that, and we're going to print row 1 at the end. So let's see if that works. So we see their spaces being removed. So that's a way of changing the information. We could substitute things in here like a ... if we wanted to, and that will give us output as well. So what we could do as well is, let's say I want to store my sequences here. So I'm creating an empty list here. I've got my sequences. I'm going to say if row 1 where is my so if so what we could do is just have seeks and set that equal to row 1, and let's see if that works. First of all, with the seeks.append command to add in row 1 instead, what we do is print seeks down here. So let's see if that works. So you can see there we have this all added to seeks down here at the end with the dot 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 as well. So what we might do therefore is have an if statement here. So if row research, so we're going to search through row 1, we're going to search for the greater than symbol is in row 1. We're going to do something. So we've got an if statement here. So we're going to append it if that's the case. What we have to consider is that if we do that, what we'll get is all the names, which we don't want. We want the sequences. So we say if not, oh dear, if not, this will therefore look to for this divided as false before executing this. If not true, it will append it. So that means we get the sequences out of there. So that's an easy way of assigning those things to a new vector, and that contain the names or the sequences or whatever we want. Another package we need to use is CSV. So import CSV is what we're going to use next, and we're going to try that package of importing a local CSV file. So let's see if we can find one that's present. So we're using the with opens construct as before. This will have our tag or nickname for that CSV file as CSV_file. What we need to do is have the special function CSV.reader. So you know our that this is the function that we need, and that will create a kind of object that we can go through in the same way as we could as a normal file. So we're going to give this a file handle F1. I'm going to call it that. We're going to say for line 1 in F1 print F1. So it's the CSV file we're going to read in there. So you can see there what we get is a CSV.reader object. So it has the information in there somewhere, but it's not accessing it in the right way. So this may be related to the structure of the CSV file. So what we're going to do is look at a different CSV file and see what that produces. So let's do that now. So we need to think about the structures that we have inside F1. So if we print F1 on its own, it's not going to work. So we need to do is access the elements inside F1. So it contains an element 0, and it will also contain another element F1, the following element inside there. So if we print these out, we can see what these produce. So you can see there we get an error because these are not working properly. So what we need are to use curly brackets because they're a reference to the aspects inside this this line 1 file handle. So you can see that there we get our sequences out. So the first one is a sample name, like A1, and you get A and so on all the way through. So you can see that we can extract the information row by row, line by line, using this approach. And that information we can assign to another array if we want to do so. And we can see that for each, we could then have another for loop. So for line 2 in line 1, we could have print line 2 on its own to print out that item. So you might print line 1 here just to see what we're printing, and then print it line 2 each time. So let's put a greater than symbol at the new line at the start, so you can see the differences between them. So you see there, if we scroll right up to the start, we have our sample header row, with the sites. So you can see the sites all the way through, and then we have our first row containing our first sample, and then print out each of the sites using this double for loop and so on all the way through. So what we might do is say if line 1 is equal to 0, so that's the first line, then we might do something different. So what we might do is print the line. What we might do is extract items inside that particular row that we want to print. So for example, we might know that inside line 1, 0, that we might need to resub that to remove the new line. Like that. So we'll look at to see if it's line 1, that's the first line, and take that out. So what we can see there is that we're checking if line 1 is equal to 0, which is not going to work. So this is not going to be very effective for us. So what we want to do instead is see if that is the first line inside here. So what we might say is that if we have a counter up here, so if you say count equals 0 outside of this whole loop, we say count plus equal, like we had before, plus equals 1. If count is equal to 1, that's the first line. That contains our sample names. So we might print out line 1 in that case. That might be what we want to do. Simply print out the sample names separately from the other ones. So we don't need this one down here. What I might say is that for each component, instead of this for loop, we're going to say if else, we're going to do something else down here. So here we might print line 1 for the interim. So let's see how well that works. So you can see there we printed them all together. And let's say we want to join our samples. We might say line 1, and we're going to join them all together. So to join that, we're going to have to think about how best to do that. So we try join with round brackets at the end like that. What we'll find is that it doesn't work because it's operating on the list. So what we have to do is provide us the list inside here and give it put quotes around it to indicate that this is a string that we're creating out of this join function. So it's going to join them all together like we had in the example, where this is taking on these values. So we're going to use the single quotes here to join this all together. And what we're going to give it is something you can join onto. So if we put that inside here, we have quotes of what it's going to join. So that will mean it doesn't join anything. So we're going to join all the DNA letters together. This hasn't worked because it's quoting the literal line. So what we have to do is put in the curly brackets to indicate that is not a strict literal that we're putting in here. So if we see what we're going to put in here. So we need at the start is a print f. So that f will indicate that we're printing a function. So you can see the colors have changed. So now this will interpret what we're giving it. So now we have the sequence and the sample name at the start. So you don't want the sample name in there. We want elements 1 to 10, which contain the sequences here. And we want at the start our sample name. So we might join that together. So line 1, here at the start, line 1, where do we go? 0. And then we can put in our additional items we want there as well. So let's check if that does the sequence. So you can see there we have the sequence. So what we need to do is put the line 1 sample name at the start with a space maybe between it and the rest. So you can see the sequences separately. So now we can see we have separated the sample from the file. So that concludes our videos on reading files in. Our next videos on reading file output will kind of build on the same thing.